This is my review of Primal's 9th episode. Correction to the last review I did on Primal. I said it was the 9th episode, it was actually the 8th. I don't know what got messed up in my head, but yeah, I also had it numbered wrong for like half the day until I got a comment telling me that I had labeled it incorrectly. But this is actually the 9th episode, the Night Feeder. This was a great episode. This is of the caliber that I was expecting. This is the first episode to not disappoint me at any point, which I'm very happy about. It's not the episode that I necessarily wanted to be the good one, but hey, this is back up to the level of episodes 4 and 5, so I'm happy about that. I'm recording this really late because I had to rewatch it a second time because there was just so much I had to say. It felt like every 20 seconds I had to write down a new note, so I have a really long list of notes. Because there's just so much to talk about with this episode. This episode was... It's still not my favorite, but I would be willing to say it is the best episode because the art and animation just felt like it was up to another level with this episode. You can tell Genndy's really getting into the swing of what he's doing with this. So we have a really pretty beginning where you have like the jungle over here, and there's some rocks, and there's a moon, and the moon's kind of colored in the sky in kind of a light green. I don't mean light as in light, but light as in like there's only a little bit of it. There's a saber tooth that comes walking out of the shadows, and then it kind of jumps down, goes from a shadow to you can see its color. Its walk is really well animated, where like you see its back hips kind of doing this, where like you can see its left hind leg when it's stepping with its right one. Some animals do that, so that's really meticulous detail to see. It's very interesting. The Night Feeder shows up and kills it, and the saber tooth lets out a horrid screech as it dies that alerts Spear and Fang. They're by fire, and it looks really nice the way that the fire's casting shadows and stuff. Spear does a very slow and deliberate movement as he reaches towards his spear to grab it. He sweats a bit to show that he's nervous. He doesn't know what's out there. They've obviously been dealing with some shit at this point. But they decide not to take any action and just kind of ignore it. Then we move to the side of a cliff, and there's this really nice shot of shadow kind of going across the mountain as the light's coming in. And here, Spear and Fang are coming in. That looked really good. You start to see big backgrounds that just look, for whatever reason with this episode, they were really sticking out to me, the backgrounds were. I don't know if I was just paying attention more or what, but they really struck me with this episode. I thought they just seemed another notch up. Very, very, very pretty backgrounds. As Spear and Fang are walking, Fang steps and some rocks fall down the mountain. That's some very meticulous animating, I guess I would say. It's a meticulous thing to do. He didn't have to do that, is what I'm saying. So it's nice to see that. Get another shot of the jungle. It just looks really fucking pretty. Then you see some blood around one of the trees. Obviously that's where the saber-tooth died. Fang starts smelling the air and kind of runs away. Fang is clearly afraid. As they come across the remains of the saber-tooth, it's really gory, and there's a lot of focus on the savagery of it. One eye has been separated from the body. Half its body is missing. There's bones sticking up, entrails. Its jaw is tore off and sitting somewhere else. Its teeth are broken. It's clearly been, brutally killed, as a lot of things in this series are. It's funny, even the fucking gore has this meticulous detail as to what was once where, and making sure it kind of makes sense of where everything ended up. It's funny. Fang kind of smells some of the entrails and runs away and is clearly scared of the Night Feeder, and I actually didn't mind Fang being here. I actually thought that this is a good use of Fang. This is one of the first times in a long time I felt like having her around didn't annoy the shit out of me. So that's good. You know, Fang was more than just a plot device for once, essentially. So they eventually move on. We get this really nice shot of the sun coming through the trees, and it's just really pretty. A lot of vibrant colors. It like switches from the normal look to being really red, and it's really pretty. And we kind of just watch as the sun goes down and they're walking through the jungle. And then we get to the night, where we get a first-person view of the Night Feeder as it's running through the trees. A lot of focus on some blues and greens in this sequence. And I could just go on and on about this first-person thing, because it was just handled really well, the way the trees are moving past it and stuff. Its speed, its kind of jerky movements, it's just all around was really creative. It's not a unique idea, but the way it was done was handled perfectly, and it was very creative. It's not a new thing that for him to do, but it definitely was done really well here. I think it was handled perfectly. We get to an area where you see some Triceratops. They are green. They have an interesting design on them. They're walking around. They look great. One of them stops to drink some water out of a puddle. Even that was like animated meticulously, which you don't have to do. It could have just as easily just had it dip its head down from a distance and just conveyed like it's drinking, but they kind of zoom in and go the extra mile with it. The Fang and Spear start hearing screeches in the night, and that alerts them. We see the Night Feeder start attacking them. Of course, it's very gory. It's slashing them and breaking their entrails to pieces and ripping it all apart. The classic thing we've come to expect from Primal, but you know, to do that to a Triceratops, you require some seriously dangerous shit of your own, you know. So immediately you start to wonder what is doing this, you know. It gets up to episode 5 levels of gore, obviously. The Triceratops all kind of go in an area and create like a wall where they're all pointed in a different direction to defend from these attacks, which is a good tactic, but it's not really something I could see an animal doing. It starts just cutting through them, ignoring their defensive formation. It cuts one straight down the middle, cutting through its skull, and the Triceratops' skull, from what I remember, is like really, really thick, so that seems like a bit of bullshit unless it's a mystical thing like the Pterodactyl Lord in the fucking Damned in the other episode. If it's something like that, it would make sense, but just an animal, it doesn't make any sense for it to be killing them the way it is. And it's only killing them, apparently. It doesn't seem to be eating them or anything. And it's killing all of them. It's not letting any get away. It just doesn't make sense. Spear wants to go after it. Fang is afraid, so Fang stops him and they have a conversation, and I don't know why they keep having conversations, because the point of this series is there's no dialogue, so We still have conversations. Apparently, they're just not going to have any dialogue. I don't know. It was weird, but they decided to leave it alone because Fang, I guess, convinced Spear that it's just no, he's not going to win or something. I don't know. So that's the end. We get more jungle as the day comes and more sun coming through the jungle. More colors, very vibrant, very pretty. Again, I think it's the best art I've seen in any episode. The storyboard is really great. There's a scene where Fang and Spear are kind of like near a stream, and they start hearing noises and they start looking around, and you see like this log with a stream under it and trees, and it's a really nice storyboard. This is a great episode as far as the backgrounds and stuff. This episode is very slow and deliberate, building tension and suspense, making you imagine what is happening because it's not showing you. It's keeping your two protagonists, I guess they're called deuteragonists, keeping them away from the threat, so you're along with them wondering what is happening and just waiting for when the conflict is going to happen. As they hear the noises, there's more sweat and clearly tense posture. You get to see Spear's really gripping his spear really hard. But it turns out just to be a small dinosaur as opposed to the night feeder. So then they start hearing some crows, I think. Some kind of decomposer bird. Fuck, I lost place. And Spear decides to climb a big ass tree to look at what they're doing. He sees this big pool of blood, which is like the way the Triceratops were last night. It looks really cool. It's a great view from up there. And that's the end of this episode, or the end of the first half of the episode, pretty much. I think they walk a little ahead, and yeah, nothing else happens. The first half is, once again, really just perfect. I love that. It's on par with the last two that we saw. Honestly, there's just, you can say something every 10 seconds about this episode, and it was hard not to write notes every 10 seconds. So during the break, you start to wonder and think about what you just saw, and so my thoughts were it's some kind of vampire clearly afraid of light. So I was imagining some kind of a banshee-esque creature, something similar to what the pterodactyl lord looked like before his transformation into a weird goopy snake man. Yeah, that's kind of what I was imagining. Or if you've seen it, the banshee that takes over Jack's sword in the graveyard episode. Something that looks like that. Something with big claws that screeches and has a big mouth. Something mystical and not fully physical is what you're imagining could do all of these things. So anyways, we come back, there's a strong wind, blowing stuff around, they hide behind a rock. You start hearing some noises. They get scared once again, a lot of focus on the sweating and the well, actually I don't think that he sweats, but Spear does make like an expression of fear. And it's clear they're both afraid, and they look around, and it's just the noise of a branch hitting a rock, but it helps build that tension because it sounds similar to a night feeder. There's the sound of footsteps. It's just a boulder being blown. It smashes against the rocks. It's obvious that this wind is going to keep them from making enough headway to get away from the night feeder, and that's why there's going to be conflict. And then we cut to another fire. There's a praying mantis hiding behind some leaves. A fly lands on a tree branch. The praying mantis catches the fly and starts eating it, which is clearly foreshadowing to what the night feeder is planning to do. It's very gory. fire will clearly be important. It's clear that the Night Feeder's afraid of light, so the fire giving off light is going to scare it away, and that's going to come into play eventually. That was pretty predictable. It's also predictable that the fire has to go out in order to create some conflict. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, it was just predictable. It's not bad predictable like the last 2 episodes, but it was predictable. Just so I can be consistent. They fall asleep, of course, and the fire does go out, and then there's just a bit of silence while you're waiting for it to show up and announce its presence and things to get going. You know, you get like 5 seconds of nothing. Building suspense and building tension, and then boom, it screeches and they get up and they're ready to fight, and Spear is sweating heavily. Fang is like, just heart's beating really fast. There's just tension, tension, tension. There's a palpable fear coming from them. And then they take off, and it's a chase. It looks great. Of course, Genndy's really good at the running animation. They run down into this lower area of the jungle where there's a lot of mist. It's a great final area for this conflict. It looks wonderful. It's very spooky. At this point, you still haven't seen the Night Feeder, and you're starting to wonder, will we even see it? Maybe it'll be the type of deal where we never see it. You know? Because it just is almost too much. And I even say that in my notes, is being built up to be too much, and I will talk about that more in a minute. So, they're once again waiting, and then boom, the Night Feeder comes at them, they dodge, and it hits a tree, and it shatters the base of the tree falls down, and Fang and Spear get separated, starts chasing after Spear, I mean. Where am I at here? Okay, it starts chasing Spear in this kind of first-person thing where, like, it's running alongside him, looking at him, and he's over here, and they're kind of running in this weird thing where they're not quite running perpendicular. They're running perpendicular, but not, like, straight. It's like a diagonal situation, which is a pretty weird angle to animate from. I thought that was really cool and really interesting. And Spear starts kind of moving through trees, and the Night Feeder starts busting through the trees. And that's too much right there. At this point, when the Night Feeder has sliced through these big fucking triceratops, and now it's destroying trees, it has to be something fantastical. It has to be some kind of vampire monster, some mystical thing. It can't just be a dinosaur because it's destroying fucking trees. And at this point, I really didn't want to see it because it's done so much that nothing that Genndy presents is going to deliver on what he's built up. Because it's literally destroying the trees like they are nothing. And at this point, we spend so much time imagining what it's going to be and what it's going to look like and what it is that it's impossible to deliver. It's not Genndy's fault that he can't deliver. It's nobody could. There's a certain level of entertainment where if you build something up too much, you cannot deliver on it, because the more people imagine stuff in their brain, you're never going to be able to match that, because their stuff is going to be less grounded, whereas you have to ground the thing. It's the best way I can put it. It's just impossible to deliver on a premise that you've built up for too long. The sounds in this episode were really good. I was kind of trying to focus on the sounds too. I thought the sounds were really good. Eventually in the first person chase, Spear kind of avoids it, and Fang jumps on it and bites it. I don't know if it killed the Night Feeder and there's another Night Feeder, or if it just ran away. It's not clear, but it's got blood and viscera on its mouth and kind of screeches. And then the Night Feeder lets out this banshee shriek that kind of cripples the two of them. Spear starts swinging his spear around wildly. He strikes a rock. It creates a light that scares the Night Feeder away as it's coming in to kill him. Of course, light is going to be the solution here. So Spear strikes again as it comes at him. It creates fire. The Night Feeder completely leaves. Spear sets Spear on fire, and him and Fang look at it. And then we kind of cut to sun setting or sun rising. I don't know if that means there was another day that went by or what that was meant to convey. I'm not sure. But, yeah, then we cut back and we're in the Night Feeder's thing. It's running through the jungle, and Spear and Fang keep lighting lights to chase it. And it seems that they're hunting it now. They start lighting fire on trees to kind of push it into a certain area, and then there's this really cool scene where Fang is running with Spear on his back, and Spear's dragging his spear on the ground with the fire, creates a wall of fire to completely trap the Night Feeder. It looks really, really fucking pretty. Really beautiful scene. Especially there's there where they cut and the fire kind of comes right at the camera. It just looks really fucking good. Especially with the first person bit. And then Spear throws his fire spear and it hits the Night Feeder, and finally we see it, and it's just a generic dinosaur with a big mouth and big claws, and it screeches and falls and dies and jumps out of the fire kind of and just dissolves. Like I said, there was never, Genndy couldn't possibly satisfy at this point. It's impossible. It's impossible with how much he built it up to actually deliver something that could have done all of those things. So I don't hold that against him, though it was disappointing to see it and see that it's just a regular dinosaur. I don't hold it against him. No one could have delivered at that point. Then we have this end where the fire's reflecting on the two of them, and it looks really nice. And we saw the next week's preview, which was more Monkey Men. No more Monkey Men fighting, which is always fun. I don't have any issue with that. Hopefully it's another episode 5. We're just killing a bunch of Monkey Men. That's what it appears to be. Hopefully there's no emotional stuff, and I just really like it. I love this episode. This is the best episode of this second season. I don't know what to call it. This is definitely the best episode. Yeah. This was definitely on par with episode 4 and 5. This was an improvement over the last two, in my opinion, because, of course, I loved those two concepts more than this one, but again, they just ended up disappointing me because of the direction the second halves of both episodes kind of took. This episode stuck with its concept all the way and executed it brilliantly, I thought. It just, once again, when you build something up for too long, you just can't possibly deliver at the level at which other people will imagine the thing to be. I think it would have been better if we didn't see the Night Feeder, and, you know, I'm sure some people would disagree, but if you really think about it, whatever you were imagining before you saw it is probably a lot cooler than what we ended up seeing. So that's my takeaway from this episode. Really hoping this next one is just another big old fight.